Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1984 Wave 3 G.I. Joe Spirit action figure and his Eagle Freedom. I was a huge fan of the Real American Hero line from the first day that I saw them. By 1984, the line was going strong as Hasbro introduced the third wave of figures. I still remember the day I first saw some of these new Wave 3 figures in the store. I was grounded at the time and not allowed to watch TV or play with any of my toys. Usually, if my father bought me any action figures, I'd get to pick maybe two. But on this day, he bought me all 5 of the new figures that were hanging on the pegs in the store, which was awesome, but I had another week before I was allowed to play with my toys again. Looking back, I wonder if he bought all 5 because he felt guilty for grounding me, or if he bought all 5 of these awesome new figures knowing that I had another week of being grounded to make the punishment even worse. As a kid, I usually liked the military-looking guys best for my G.I. Joe team. There were definitely exceptions, but the more random figures just didn't make as much sense to me. Even though Spirit didn't look like someone in the military, I still liked him a lot. I think I must have justified his presence by thinking of him more as a former military man who worked as kind of an independent contractor for the G.I. Joe team when they needed a tracker or whatever his mission required that day. As a kid, I wouldn't have put it into those words, but I did think of him as less than 100% military, which meant that he didn't always have to follow the rules. Spirit's file card even said that he had returned to the service for reasons inexplicable to anyone but a Native American mystic warrior, which I took to mean top secret reasons that could be anything depending on what my adventures for my G.I. Joes were going to be that day. As a kid, my Spirit action figure was a mix of every Native American Indian I'd seen on TV and in the movies, from Tonto to Nakoma from Grizzly Adams to Apache Chief from the Super Friends. That meant that Spirit was smart, brave, and wise. He knew all kinds of things about nature, and he was an amazing tracker. His file card also says that he's a shaman, and in fact, on the original Canadian release of the figure, Spirit's codename was Shaman instead of Spirit. For me, his uniform strengthened the idea that he was more of a contractor with the Army rather than a standard recruit. Spirit had long hair with braids, which doesn't seem like it would have been regulation for a soldier. He wore a red headband with matching red t-shirt under a light blue button-up shirt. The blue shirt had his rank insignia on the left shoulder and a patch that I'm not familiar with on the right shoulder. The patch was printed in a couple of different sizes throughout the run of this figure. The one you're looking at here is the larger version. His shirt had a pocket molded on each side of the chest, with the pocket on the left side being mostly covered by the molded strap for his backpack and a painted-on knife. On the right side, just above the pocket, he has 2 different grenades. Around his neck, Spirit is wearing a necklace with a couple of feathers and either claws or teeth. He wears tan pants with fringe on both sides and a second knife painted on his left hip. He wears dark brown boots. He also had a bracelet on each wrist. They were originally gold, but the paint on mine has worn pretty much completely off of my figure's wrists. Spirit came with a good bit of gear. He wears a standard military web belt with a couple of pouches, and it looks like he's customized the belt by adding a red loincloth to match his headband and t-shirt. His rifle is an auto arrow launcher, and he came with a backpack that held more ammunition for the rifle, as well as a couple more grenades. I've mentioned before that I felt like I was getting a bonus when G.I. Joe figures came with an animal. Spirit came with a bald eagle, who we find out in the cartoon is named Freedom. The eagle was sculpted with a lot of detail and clips onto Spirit's wrist. I'm sure that that's the main reason that the gold paint is gone from my figure's wrists, but including the eagle with Spirit was still a really nice touch. In 1985, Spirit's backpack and gun were included in the Battle Gear Accessory Pack number 3, along with a lot of other gear from the 1984 wave. All of the accessory pack gear was molded in a different color than the original pieces, and Spirit's backpack and gun were molded in a tan instead of a green. In 1983, Hasbro teamed up with Sunbow to release a 5-part G.I. Joe cartoon movie made for television. It was popular enough that they teamed up again in 1984 for the Revenge of Cobra 5-part TV cartoon. Spirit makes his cartoon debut in the opening credits for Episode 1. He appears in the movie a fair amount. In Episode 3, he has his first fight with Storm Shadow, which becomes a strange recurring theme throughout the cartoon series. I find it interesting that in the Sunbow cartoons, Spirit seems to be Storm Shadow's nemesis. I'm not really sure how a Native American tracker learned how to fight so well that he feels comfortable taking on ninjas, although this isn't even remotely close to the most unrealistic element of the G.I. Joe cartoon. I thought it was worth pointing out since it's a theme that keeps appearing with Spirit in the Sunbow series. Spirit and Storm Shadow fight again early in Episode 4. This episode features Spirit heavily, including a scene where he's saved from being buried alive under an avalanche by Storm Shadow. I thought it was cool that they gave him a coat for this part of the story instead of having him run around in a short-sleeved shirt in the snow. With the success of the two movies, a regular G.I. Joe cartoon series was launched in 1985, just in time to promote the 1985 line of action figures. But even though he was released as part of the 1984 wave, Spirit made quite a few appearances in the series. In fact, I think he was in almost 40 episodes. Although he was pretty much a background character with no dialogue in more than half of those, he did make about a dozen significant appearances. Spirit's most significant role in any of the G.I. Joe cartoons was probably in the episode Satellite Down, in which Cobra crashes a G.I. Joe satellite in Africa, and both G.I. Joe and Cobra try to be the first to recover it. Spirit and Dusty are already flying Sky Strikers around in Africa for some reason, so they're the first to respond. It's your typical primitive natives find a piece of technology and think it's a god storyline, but it's really not a bad episode. Spirit comes across Storm Shadow early in the episode and the two almost fight, then their paths cross again later in the episode and they do fight. Actually, I have to give the writers of this episode credit, because they did use Spirit's skills as a tracker, which according to the action figures package is what Spirit is there to do. So often characters' main function was never addressed in the cartoons, so it was nice that in this case, they used the right guy for the job. They even made use of his eagle Freedom numerous times in this episode too, as a scout in the sky, as an ally in several fights, and to help the Joe team find the missing team members, so bonus points there. Also, Spirit's backpack shows up numerous times in this episode, and he's even shown carrying his auto arrow launching rifle. His outfit on the cartoon looks very similar to the figure, and though they don't show the knife on his suspenders, they do show the knife on his left leg. Spirit also plays a key role in the episode Countdown for Zartan, where Zartan infiltrates the Worldwide Defense Center in disguise. Spirit and Freedom notice that something's not right. They follow Zartan and catch him secretly letting Storm Shadow into the building. Once again, Spirit and Storm Shadow fight. While Spirit is distracted, Zartan plants a bomb. Spirit sends Freedom to find the other Joes and bring back help. The fight scene between Spirit and Storm Shadow in this episode is pretty long and well animated, and results in Spirit being knocked out and captured by Cobra. Once in his cell, Torch fills the cell with laughing gas to torture Spirit. But Storm Shadow stops Torch because that's not an honorable way to treat a prisoner. Spirit escapes the cell by using a hidden throwing knife to press the button that opens the door to the cell. After freeing himself from the cell, Spirit steals a rattler to escape, destroying Cobra's base on his way out. Spirit is once again shown wearing his backpack in this episode, which is a small detail that I particularly like. Even though Spirit doesn't show up until 3/4 of the way through the episode Cobra's Creatures, he has a lot of screen time packed into those few minutes. In this episode, Spirit and his eagle Freedom, along with Snake Eyes and his wolf Timber, go on a rescue mission to save Scarlet, Ripcord, and Mutt, with his dog Junkyard, of course. Dr. Lucifer has built a weapon that allows Cobra to control animals, so it only makes sense that all of the characters with animal sidekicks would be in this episode. I guess Shipwreck hadn't been developed yet. Because Spirit is only in the last few minutes of the episode, his role is smaller, but still, in that amount of time, he figures out that the moat is filled with piranhas right before Snake Eyes jumps in, and he also fights with a couple of Cobra guards during the rescue. Then Freedom bites Cobra Commander at the end of the battle. Finally, Spirit and Snake Eyes are the two Joes who capture Dr. Lucifer. I guess there really wasn't time in the episode to show Spirit actually being a tracker, but they did use him a good bit in only a few minutes. The original cartoon ran from 1983 until 1986, and Spirit appeared in quite a few of those episodes. A second G.I. Joe cartoon, which felt to me like it was geared towards a younger audience, started in 1989. Although many of the characters from the original show didn't appear in this series, Hasbro had just released a team of characters called Slaughter's Marauders, which were repaints of older figures. In the movie that introduced the new show, Operation Dragonfire, Spirit and the other Slaughter's Marauders characters were featured. Interestingly, the uniform designs were not the same in the cartoon as the figures, and I actually prefer the uniform designs in the cartoon quite a bit over the action figure designs. It's also interesting to me that for some reason, the Slaughter's Marauders action figure of Spirit wasn't given eyebrows, which makes him look very strange to me. In addition to the surprising number of appearances that Spirit made in the cartoon, he was also featured a fair number of times in the G.I. Joe comic book. Throughout the original Marvel Comics run of G.I. Joe, Spirit appeared in more than 30 issues of the regular G.I. Joe title alone, and that doesn't count side titles related to G.I. Joe. He was often referred to as Spirit Iron Knife. On his file card, his real name is listed as Charlie Iron Knife. I don't know if there was some kind of a trademark issue with calling him simply Spirit, or if the writers just thought that Spirit Iron Knife sounded cooler, but the longer name is used quite a bit, even though at times it seems pretty awkward. Many of Spirit's appearances in the comics were minor, but he was also a main character in several multi-issue storylines, beginning with his first appearance in issue number 31. In what was probably my favorite of Spirit's adventures, he and Airborne parachute out of a cargo plane to keep an eye on Snake Eyes while he's on leave at a cabin in the mountains. The story involves a cobra attack on Snake Eyes, some serious injuries, and even a death. And as an added bonus, there was a decent amount of Spirit using his tracking skills in this story as well. Spirit was part of a G.I. Joe recon team in the very large Cobra Island story, which was another multi-issue storyline in G.I. Joe. So many characters were involved that none of them really stole the show, but again, Spirit used his tracking skills in this storyline as well, and honestly, the part of the story that focused on the recon team was probably my favorite part of this multi-issue storyline. The last story arc to feature Spirit was in 1990. Years after the Spirit action figure had originally come out. Even though the Slaughter's Marauders version of the character had come out in 1989, he was in his original outfit for these comics. In this story, Spirit and Mutt are on leave and go to visit Mutt's uncle in a small town. Around the same time they arrive, Cobra has just taken over the town. Spirit and Mutt have to get word about what's going on back to the G.I. Joe team. Although Spirit didn't use any of his tracking skills in this story, it didn't bother me at all since he wasn't assigned to be there. He and Mutt just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Aside from these three story arcs, the majority of Spirit's appearances in the comics were very small parts or even just an appearance in the background. However, Spirit can occasionally be seen sitting on a rug meditating and hiding the entrance to the pit, the secret G.I. Joe base, or in a couple of panels doing his tracking thing. I feel like Spirit is usually seen in the comics doing a job that matches his title on the action figure's packaging relatively well. The kind of consistency between the file card, cartoon, and comic is something that I really appreciated with Spirit. Although he appeared a good bit in the main run, I don't think Spirit appeared in a single issue of G.I. Joe Special Missions. But like every other G.I. Joe character who was out at the time, Spirit did have a page in the G.I. Joe Order of Battle comic book with text from his file card and a single image of the character. Spirit was pictured on the box art for the 1985 Armadillo riding on the back next to Alpine and Dusty. Although he didn't appear very often on the G.I. Joe box art, on the 1985 Forward Observer unit from the Battlefield Accessories line, he was the featured character. I had a lot of adventures with Spirit and Freedom as a kid. I always thought he was a cool action figure and a good character. Even though there were a lot of amazing figures released in 1984, Spirit was one of the team members who managed to stand out from the rest for me. He had a more defined role on the team in my mind, and that role was reinforced by his use in both the cartoon and the comic book. What did you think of Spirit and his Eagle pal Freedom? Did you have a Spirit figure as a kid? Did he soar to the top of your list of favorite Joes, tracking his way into all of the action? Or was he peacefully regulated to the toy box to meditate about life? Tell me in the comments below. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and share it on social media. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications bell so that you'll be notified when I post new videos. And one last thing, if you're a fan of toys, you should know about Toylanta, the biggest toy show in the southeastern United States, held annually just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Visit Toylanta.com for more information. As always, thanks for watching.